I'm Ricky Bauman, Chair, and I'm calling the Hillsborough County Land Use Appeals Board to order at 1:30 p.m. on April 1st, 2022. I'd like to introduce our staff and board members, Mr. Tom Hisney from Development Services, Ms. Sonia Rodriguez, Manager of Citizens Board Support, Cameron Clark, our Assistant County Attorney. I am the Chair, as I said. Jerry Campbell, a board member, is with us remotely. Next to me is Mr. Bradley Cornelius, the Vice Chair.
Tom Hisney is not here.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. In place of Mr. Tom Hisney from Development Services, we have Israel Monsanto. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Board member Justin Evans is present and is alternate board member Stanley Hindi Jr. And recording secretary is Rabia Smith. These are the rules and procedures for the appeals hearing. This board is an appellate body and shall only consider the land use hearing officer's decision and the record. This hearing shall be limited to the record on appeal as defined in Land Development Code 10.03.03.h and consist only of limited oral argument based upon said record. No additional evidence may be submitted or considered by the board members. The order of presentation will be staff's introduction, petitioner's case, opposition's case, rebuttal by petitioner. Only the following have standing to appeal or to intervene in appeal which is filed or may be heard at this hearing: the applicant, the administrator, any person or entity which appeared before the LUHO and presented testimony or other evidence or presented evidence themselves or by proxy to LUHO and was adversely affected by the decision of the LUHO. The board reserves the right to limit presentation to 10 minutes per side. This time limit may be extended for good cause. Pursuant to this reservation, the presentation is hereby limited to 10 minutes for each side, with rebuttal limited to 5 minutes. The basis for a good cause extension: case reasonably requires additional time. Proposed additional presentation is relevant. Proposed additional presentation is non-cumulative amount of time used to answer board's questions. The board shall have the authority to uphold the land use hearing officer's decision or to remand the case back to the land use hearing officer. If the board remands a case back to the land use hearing officer, the board shall specify the reason for the remand and specify the issues for the land use hearing officer to address. Ms. Rodriguez, please administer the oath to those offering testimony.
Those who will be giving testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. First case on the agenda is appeal number APP 22-0455, petition file number VAR 21-1256. The appellant is Jerry M. and Patrick T. Police. The representative is Todd Pressman. The petition request is to appeal the decision of the land use hearing officer who denied the request for a variance for a 5-foot reduction to the required side yard to allow a 5-foot side setback from the southerly lot line for a proposed attached garage. The location is 15102 Lake Magdalene Boulevard, Tampa. The folio is 016640.00000. Property size is 1.01 acres, more or less. The existing zone is ASC-1, future land use R-4, service area is urban, and the date of the land use hearing officer's hearing was December 13, 2021. And can you come forward to speak? Name and address for the record.
Todd Pressman, 200 Second Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg. But from the chairwoman, I understood the staff was going to make a review first. However you'd like to proceed, but that's what I thought I heard the chairwoman say. Staff would review the issue. But again, I'm happy to proceed any way you like.
I think you're fine to proceed.
Okay. If we could bring up the PowerPoint, please. Madam Chairman, board members, I'm here today with Mr. Patrick Police, who this is his residential home for him and his family. What I'd like to review is a few items just to orient you to the site and then discuss the hearing officer's responses. So if we could, we'll go through some slides quickly, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, back one. So this is the police, if we go back one, this is the police family home. Next slide, please. Site plan, residential home on a corner lot. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This lot has been in existence for a long time. Next slide, please. 1973. Variances. Next slide, please. We're only appealing one variance. All the sheds and other elements have been resolved. Next slide, please. And the setback from Love Forest Way has been resolved. Next slide, please. We're here for this request, which is the proposed attached garage, as indicated here in the red, requesting a variance of 5 feet on the side. Next slide, please. 10 foot's required. Again, proposing 5-foot variance. Next slide, please. We do the support of the abutting neighbor. Want to make sure to reach out to that neighbor and they're in support of the request, or have no opposition to it. Next slide, please. This is the side where the garage would be. There's currently a shed that would be removed and the garage would be placed in that manner. So this is what's existing. You can see there's a number of cars lined up. Next slide, please. The push of where we're going is where was the best place for this attached garage to be located. Next slide, please. And you can see that we have concerns about drainage. The site does drain towards the pond. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the site is set up to handle the drainage by piping and a culvert and a ditch. So it's well handled to handle the drainage required for this property. Next slide, please. These are some of the drainage elements. Next slide, please. This would be the location of the proposed garage. The purpose of it being to add as little pervious as possible. So we did not have to do too much with drainage and reflect what's currently going on at this particular lot and how it has to work. Next slide, please. So we would reduce the drainage impacts. The site is not overbuilt. Res 4 is a 0.25 FAR. The FAR here is 10.8, so we're way below a footprint on the property. Next slide, please. And this is some of the features of the property where there's some safety concerns. So I'm going to switch what I'm speaking about specifically to the hearing officer. I like to respond to each criterion that the hearing officer had. Item number 1, which is the hardship or practical difficulty. The hearing officer notes, and this is all in the written submittal to the board. She notes that the home was existing in 1978, and they knew there was no home, that the home did not have a garage. Well, Madam Chairman and board members, with all due respect to the hearing officer, prior knowledge or awareness of an applicant is not part of any of the variance criteria. That is, with all due respect, made up by the hearing officer. I don't mean that negatively, but her purpose of denying that number 1 criterion doesn't refer to a topographical or geographical condition, which is a primary variance or a primary reason for a variance, something that's different and unique. She places it specifically on prior knowledge, which is absolutely not supported or stated in any variance criteria 1 through 6. Item number 2 is deprive the property owner of rights commonly enjoyed by others. Well, all you have to do is drive all throughout Hillsborough County, and I would say whatever in residential typical urban areas, 90%, 95% of homes have a garage. A garage is the typical everyday purpose for parking of vehicles, safety of persons accessing their homes. And she notes, record evidence shows the existing home has been functioning without a garage. That's absolutely not the case. Mr. Police will speak in a few minutes. They have difficulty keeping their cars in a decent condition. He has a number of children and daughters who at night with the overbearing trees and it's very dark have to park outside, and they don't like the lack of security for the kids to be able to park in the garage and access the home through the garage, let alone storage and what we all use a garage for. So to say that the house is not functional without a garage is just absolutely incorrect, and is a second mistake, like criteria number one, which is your criterion to overturn the variance or remand the variance, is that there's mistakes in the record. Criteria number three is that would interfere with or injure the rights of others. Well, what the hearing officer reaches some kind of conclusion without any evidence or any information that it would divert, quoting, would divert or dam surface water flow and cause adverse impacts. Well, any of you in the construction or real estate business know any change that requires a permit is going to go through Hillsborough County for stormwater retention and water flow and floods control, all those elements. So to say that this would have an adverse impact is absolutely incorrect and a third mistake. In fact, we've shown you that the site is very well built to handle the specific drainage elements at this site by piping and a drainage, which is unique and singular in this particular area. That's a third mistake. Criteria number four is, will the variance serve the general intent and purpose? The hearing officer says, quite frankly, that's not in harmony with, does not serve the general intent and purpose of the LDC. Well, I will say to you again, as at this point, with all due respect to the hearing officer, she starts to repeat these points, which you tend to do with 6 criterion, that garages are a normal, everyday, needed element of a residential home. Most people in the urban area, and of course in the rural areas, have garages. And to say that it's not in harmony with, or doesn't serve the general intent of the codes and homes built in Hillsborough County is absolutely incorrect and another mistake. Criteria number 5 is a variance will result from the legal act or result from the actions. Well, there is no legal act here. No one has indicated that there has been. She goes back to the point that when they bought the home, they knew there would not be a garage, which again is a created criterion by the hearing officer. Prior awareness of the need for a variance or prior awareness of a condition is not a criterion under the 6 points that you review to either approve or deny a variance. So with due respect to the hearing officer, again, that is made up in terms of applying that as a criterion. Item number 6 is that the variance will result in substantial justice being done. At this point, the hearing officer, with no disrespect, repeats a number of the same points. But when we look at substantial justice being done, both to the public benefits and the hardship suffered by the failure to grant the variance is very clear in terms of the use every day of a garage at a home. When we're looking at a minimal variance, to be sure that we're meeting the confines and directions of this lot and how it works and the drainage to the lake, and the safety of the police, children and his wife, particularly in inclement weather, which we have a lot in the summer. So we would suggest to you on all criterions 1 through 6 what we submitted is that there are mistakes in every criterion. Every one of those criteria, we would ask with respect your consideration that it be sent back to the hearing officer on those particular points. Madam Chair, if Mr. Police may come up and make a statement. Thank you.
And thank you for giving me your guys' time and your energies here today. And fortunately, I'm not used to speaking in this, so please excuse my nervousness.
Please state your name and address.
Patrick Blizzy. My address is 15102 Lake Magdalene Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33618. And if I may, I don't know who are the citizens that I'm appealing to. I moved kind of quick, I guess. Are you on a citizen? Who are the volunteers
The board
here?
is here.
So
These-
you four people are.
And Mr. Campbell on remote.
Hi, Mr. Campbell. All right. Well, like I said, that's why I'm here. I'm here to, come before you guys and plead that you guys overturn this recommendation. I'm a fellow citizen, I believe that this board is put in place to help ensure that the citizens are not being taken advantage of or misrepresented and I know you're here for the best interest of at your heart. You're volunteering, so you're here for the interest of the well-being of other people, and I really appreciate that. And in this society, everything comes down to the jot and tittle of the law. And, and I believe you guys are here in place to help listen to simple logic. I'm sure you probably already know, I've paid $2,000 to have the opportunity to appeal, to put something on my own property. If you think about it from your property standpoint, like I know we have to stay within the confines of the law, but I don't feel like I'm asking for anything outrageous, and I actually paid for the opportunity to try to get the variance. I also did hire this gentleman, Mr. Pressman, who does a great job. As you can tell, to help guide me through the process, because, I mean, if you see the process that it takes, it's not just an average person can get through it. And that's unfortunate as well. So we were denied by one lady at the appeal board, and I'm not sure, I guess she gave us her reasons, but the bottom line is she just didn't agree with that I should have a garage in my house, and then she came up with all these reasons as to why not. I understand if I was asking, I don't know if you saw the house, I live across the street from a lake, and it is quite a bit of an inconvenience to walk across a busy thoroughfare to get to the lake. So I could understand if I was asking the board to say, hey, I want to make a hand walkway that goes over the Lake Magdalene Boulevard so I don't have to cross the street to get to the lake. Now that to me would be kind of an outlandish request, and it doesn't fit the contour of the neighborhood. It's going to be an eyesore possibly to the people driving. It's going to affect traffic. The list goes on of what the problems could be from that, and that's why we have the laws we have, so crazy things like that don't happen. And I would understand that, but I have, like I said, a family that I'm trying to take care of, and I have two daughters that are 16 and 18, still at home, and they are, young daughters, and the road does not have any lights. It's just a black road. There's no street lights out there, and it would be nice if we had a garage for them to go through to get into the house. On top of that, one of the things I didn't know about, which this is where the real hardship was, but evidently she didn't believe me or doesn't think it's a thing. But my old house that I used to live at, we just moved. It's been almost 2 years ago now. We did have a 2-car garage, and when we first moved into that house 23 years ago, 3 months after being living there, we got burglarized. And my wife was freaked out to literally having to go to see therapy help. And we had to put burglar bars on the house. We had to get a security alarm. And we got through that time in life. And that was 20 years ago. And since then, she's gotten past it and she's been fine. Well, since we moved, something triggered. I don't know what it was. Watched something on the news, whatever. But now when she comes home and she can't pull into the garage, has a problem. She has to call me, or she's nervous, or there's problems, and it's causing. That's the main thing as to why we wanted to get the garage. And I didn't know that was going to happen. We did have plans to put a garage on when we purchased the house, but we had a plan. We had to fix the house up. It wasn't in the greatest condition, so we got past that point, and then we decided that we wanted to try to put the garage on. And on top of that, the fact that she is getting scared about coming in at night. So we decided to go for that. And what's the other thing I have here? Oh, the other thing is the only person that it really affects, I talked to my neighbor, and they are fine with it and have no problems with it. And I know you guys are volunteering. I appreciate your service to the community. I appreciate you guys for listening to this, and I just beg of you to overturn what this lady has denied. And if you have any questions, or we'd love to answer them for you.
With that, Madam Chair, we appreciate your attention. I would just leave with the point that with a 5-foot setback as requested, there's still a 15-foot difference between the two homes, which I think is a major consideration. And we do the least impact on pervious on this particular site. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Does any board member have any questions of Mr. Pressman or Mr. Pelisi?
Chair, just
Mr. Cornelius?
two quick questions. Mr. Pressman, thank you. Just a question about the proposed garage is what my question is. I'm looking at what's submitted with the record here, and it appears, and I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. It appears that he's looking to do a 5-car garage that's approximately 31 feet across. Is that correct?
I would, Mr. Belize's answer once, I'll get his answer.
Yeah, that's why I have the question, because that's what's shown in the drawing in the record, so.
Mr. Belize is indicating 3 cars, but to confirm that, I would need to pull the PowerPoint up again, just to be sure I'm answering your question correctly.
Yes, sir. And I guess my question then would be, is the width of the garage 31 feet, and I believe that says 4 inches? At the front of the garage.
What page you on? Mr.
Yeah, I was just saying for the board members, I'm on page 58 of the packet.
Can we get page 58 displayed, please?
And there's a blow up of the proposed garage on that page, on that site plan.
Mr. Cornelius, just while he's looking for that, the reason we're here is that is a proposed, and when I went to get the drawings done, that's where I realized we had all these variance problems. So there's nothing that's drawn 100% yet. That is just the idea of what we're trying to, what the architect was requesting for to be able to put 3 cars inside the garage. The other space, because of the angle of the lot, it has the other cars in there, but they really won't fit. It just makes sense for the design of the way the angle goes back with the lot. That's what he was proposing, but there's nothing that's been set yet. I was just trying to get through the variance process first.
Okay.
So what measurement were you speaking, sir?
At the front of the proposed garage, I see a dimension on there that calls it at 31 feet 4 inches, I believe.
That's approximately correct, yes, from what I see, yes. And then Mr. Belize does show 5 vehicles there, but that was a reference to how big it would be, allow for storage, things of that nature too. But he does have 3 kids, so parking is a premium at the police home.
So Mr. President, I guess, again, just make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So if this were a standard 2-car garage, which are generally 20 feet in width, then you would no longer need the variance. Would that be correct?
I would have to work out the measurement. That does sound correct. The function of what we're requesting is a function of a residential home and its family and its needs. And I think it's fair to say that 3-car garages and width are relatively very common.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Any other board members have any questions? Mr. Pressman, I was looking at the same exact diagram as Mr. Cornelius. And first of all, the way this thing is laid out, the diagram of the garage itself with the actual measurements is reversed. So it's a little difficult to figure out from the beginning. But there's the way it's laid out, there's 2 spaces, the 2 cars, then there's a big space, and then there's another car and there's a space. And I understand that you need room to get in and get out, but had this been drawn properly, conceivably you wouldn't even have need a variance. And to your point right in the beginning, I have to take exception to it. The land use hearing officer made an observation. The house was built without a garage. If it ever had a garage, way in the beginning, it was either converted or however it had been done. But the point being is that the home is a functional home without a garage. And why? Because it was occupied all these years without one. It doesn't mean it would be perfect for everyone. It doesn't mean it makes life easy for everyone, but the statement of the land use hearing officer is not wrong. The home is functional. Whether it suits somebody is a whole different animal, because what home suits you may not suit me or may not suit anybody else. So there's nothing wrong with that observation. The record, it's certainly not an error.
With all due respect, without having the paper, without having my notes in front of me, the direction of the hearing officer on criterion 1 was awareness of the issue. And while on some levels of thinking that would make sense, but in the strict realm of criterion 1, leaving your methodology in response to the fact of awareness of a situation, in all due respect, is not part of that criterion. And having prior awareness. There's many variances that come through a zoning hearing officer, and some people are aware of them up front. There's a big tree on the lot. Okay, let's buy the lot. We know the tree's here. It's in the city of Tampa, let's say, for example, it's a grand tree that can't be cut down. So the applicant has awareness of a situation, but a variance is still warranted because it's a grand tree and they don't take grand trees down. So that's just one example of why awareness or pre-knowledge of a variance situation is not supported by criterion number 1. It's created by a hardship of topographical and geographical nature, which we've shown you is the unique drainage flow on this site.
Drainage is drainage. There have been God knows how many different ways to drain a property. I'm not going to get into that personally, simply because I don't have the expertise, but I don't know that any particular property is so singular that that issue can't be taken care of. It may cost money, it may be involved, but I leave that to experts in the Developmental Services Department. Mr. Monsanto, would you?
That's exactly correct. And that's what we said, Madam Chair, is that the hearing officer said this is going to cause adverse impacts without any information or any evidence. Yet, as I couldn't agree with you more, these things go through a permitting process, and that's going to be assured. So that is a mistake by the hearing officer, in our opinion.
In your opinion. Mr. Campbell.
Yes, I believe it was Mr. Cornelius who stated that when he looked at the diagram, it appeared that you could almost get 4 cars across the front of it. And in fact, I was independently looking at it earlier, and I was thinking that if it had been a
Excuse me, we're not able to hear. This is Robbie from the clerk's office. We can't hear you.
Mr. Campbell, we're hearing you here. We just, it's a little quiet. Could you maybe lean closer to the microphone?
Okay. I had the same observation that I think Mr. Cornelius made, that as I looked at the diagram, although they have 3 cars across at the front, there's a lot of space there. It looks like almost you could get a 4th car in there. And I was thinking that the same thing, that if it had been a 2-car garage, 2 cars in width, you may not even need a variance and you could have the garage that you seek. It looks like you could even make it a 4-car garage by going too deep, perhaps without ever needing any kind of variance. It's something that would be allowed on the property as it exists. Now, there may be reasons why the architect, just from looking at it from the roadway, he wanted the building to look straight across and maximize the garage space. But it seems to me, as I'm looking at this, as though you may not need a variance. And that's something that, regardless of how this all turns out, it would be something that perhaps you should look into. Also, I wanted to just state that my understanding as a volunteer board member is we have very limited discretion on this. We have to look at what the hearing officer ruled. And in order for us to remand it back to the hearing officer, we have to find that the hearing officer made some sort of mistake. And it's not our discretion whether or not we think something would look okay on the piece of property or not. That's not the level of discretion, my understanding, that we have. That we simply have to rule, did the hearing officer make a mistake on their ruling? And if they didn't, then we are bound to uphold it. If they did make a mistake, as our chairperson said at the beginning of this, then we can ask them to relook at it or remand it. But I just wanted to make sure that there was clarity on that. Thank you.
Do any other members have any questions of either Mr. Pelizzi or Mr. Pressman? Mr. Pressman, time for your rebuttal, if any.
We appreciate your time today. You're obviously taking a close look at this. I think one thing that needs to be taken into account is the site and the family, the scope of the site and the home, and what the needs are. That is part of the equation. And I think the public safety of the family is also something that is called into account. Those are elements that we don't feel the hearing officer applied in any manner or any emotional element, which we think is a vital part of this case. Critically, we sent out a large number of notices. We received absolutely no opposition from anyone in the public. We made a big point about our neighbor being in support, and that's a critical factor, and there's still 15 feet between the two structures. So calling into question if this is a minimal variance, which, by the way, the hearing officer, I don't believe, by memory, even referred to that as being an issue, because we don't believe, we believe it is a minimal variance for the mass and scale and scope of the site. So again, Madam Hearing Officer, and by the way, for the staff who are here today, we appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
As there are no more questions for this case, I will entertain a motion to either support or to remand, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
Vice Chair Cornelius?
I'll make a motion to uphold the decision of the land use hearing officer.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hindi. Any discussion on this issue? Mr. Campbell? Any comment?
No, I'm sorry. I just unmuted it in anticipation of being able to vote.
Okay. As there is no further discussion, let us start the roll. I'll start with you, Mr. Campbell.
I support the motion to uphold it.
Mr. Hindi?
I support it.
Mr. Evans?
Uphold.
Mr. Cornelius?
I support the motion to uphold.
As I do, Ms. Rodriguez, note that the board's decision is unanimous to uphold the land use hearing officer's decision.
Noted.
Ms. Rodriguez, is there any other business for the board this morning, this afternoon?
The approval of the minutes,
Okay,
and we have no hearing for next month. I haven't received any cases for.
okay, thank you. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February meeting that were sent out. It is February, is it not?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Well, being there's no discussion on it, minutes are
Who
approved.
made the motion in the second, please?
Minutes are approved, Ms. Rodriguez.
She's asking who made the motion. It was Cornelius,
Mr. Cornelius, seconded by Mr. Evans.
second by Evans.
Thank you.
There being no further business, the Hillsborough County Land Use Appeals Board is adjourned at 2:04 p.m. Thank you all for coming.